All right, everybody, it's the Combatcast with a man called Dave and Chevy, and we are episode 158. How about that? UFC 303 review today. But before that, let's talk about the people that paid the bills. Game up.
Yes, we would like to thank our sponsors, Game Up. They make a thirst-quenching adult beverage with a special blend of electrolytes. Currently comes in 4 great flavors: fruit punch, orange, lemon lime, and grape.
That's right. Low carb and only 110 calories per can. So enjoy some Game Up and enjoy what we got coming up.
That's right. Coming up July 13th, UFC Fight Night, Namajunas versus Barber. And then, actually, no, that got switched, didn't it? Barber's out. So it's going to be Tracy Cortez. Let me update my schedule. Tracy Cortez stepping in. Barber had some sort of injury. And then July 20th, UFC Fight Night, Lemos versus Jane Drobra. She's a fighter in the UFC, so that's a fight. And then July 27th, UFC 304, Edwards versus Muhammad 2. If you remember, that first fight ended in a terrible eye poke. So Muhammad's finally getting his title shot at the welterweight belt.
All right, Muhammad. That should be a good, fun fight. We got Tom Aspinall and Curtis Blades on that card too. So
yeah, tough matchup for our boy Tom Aspinall.
That is the toughest matchup for Tom Aspinall when you think about it. Maybe even tougher than John Jones when you just look at stylistically what Curtis Blades brings to that table. So, and Patty Pimblett and Bobby Green are on that show too. So
yeah, it's a good card.
Yeah. So, but we just had UFC 303, so we're going to talk about this show. And man, this card ended up being interesting. We had a fight we didn't even think was going to happen. Before we get to the main card and our picks from this past week, any prelim fights you want to highlight?
Well, yeah, we want to shout out Andrei Arlovsky, who this ended up being his last fight in the UFC. He got cut afterwards. Very boring fight. It was tough to watch. So the guy's like 45 years old. So hopefully he finds something else to do. But I imagine we'll see him in like bare knuckle or something.
Sure.
And then also retiring Michelle Waterson Gomez. She took a loss to Jillian Robertson. Not a bad way to go out because Jillian's on such a great tear, but she got a nice video package from the UFC, which was nice.
Yeah.
Cub Swanson, Andre Feely, great fight, obviously. But Joe Pyfer knocking out Marc-Andre Barrio was the highlight of the prelims for sure.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Vicious knockout. Joe Pyfer, say what you will, but he's definitely got some power. So it's going to be interesting to see him as he progresses.
For sure.
But, all right, let's get to this main card.
All right, main card started off with Ian Machado Garry versus Michael Venom Page.
So I think we kind of saw this for what it was. I think you picked MVP. I picked Ian Garry here, but I mean, we both realized that, MVP was probably going to have a striking advantage. I said I thought that Ian Garry would use some of his other stuff, although as we were getting closer, I was thinking, you're right. He might try to get into a striking match with him, but clearly he did not want to do that because clearly he was not close to MVP's level on his striking. However, I don't know. Like they talked about MVP's ground game. He definitely was at a disadvantage, but I was not impressed with Ian Garry's ground game overall too. I thought he was just better enough basically to take MVP down, and he did what he did to have enough control time and threaten a few submission positions. But I think you had said it once. I don't know how he didn't finish that first initial choke. But nonetheless, good win for Ian Garry. I'll let you comment on the fight. I do hope they book the Kobe Covington fight. I know that there was still talk about that. I think at this point, Ian could use a guy who's like talented, but maybe like a welterweight to give him like some rub still, but also get him ready because I don't think he's quite ready to take those upper echelon middleweight yet.
Yeah. It was not the best fight, which we thought it might not be. Had potential to be great, but a lot of people come in against MVP and they turn into these grapplers, whether they're real grapplers or not. And that's what happened here. Ian basically was clinching and then pulling guard. He wasn't even wrestling for takedowns very much. He pulled the guard a couple times. He almost had a leg at one point, but the big miss was his submission attempt where he had his arm underneath MVP's chin and he had his hand locked and it was behind MVP's head. So I've never seen a rear naked choke. I don't think in the UFC that has been locked up so deeply and not been finished. So I'm not sure what the cause for that was, whether he didn't realize how deep it was or it wasn't as deep as it looked on the broadcast, but he should have finished him. With that being said, MVP's grappling is strictly just stalling techniques to try to survive on the ground before it gets, stood back up. But either way, Ian Garry should have had a finish. It was a boring fight. Not the most exciting card finish-wise, but we did have a couple exciting things. Let's move on to the next fight. So, Mayra Bueno Silva versus Macy Chiasson.
All right, Macy looked a little slower, I'll say at times. Maya was definitely looking like the faster fighter. Maybe I don't know stronger, but she was hitting with some hard shots and connecting. But Macy was able to use her size in round 2, got her down, and then really split her open with a vicious elbow that really opened up a real bad cut. Now, Maya did get back to her feet. She looked ready to go, but that cut was deep, so they brought the doctor in and they stopped it. So Macy got to win TKO stoppage because of that cut. So now I don't disagree with the stoppage. I think it was a good stoppage. I think obviously Maya wanted to still go. But that being said, it's one of those stoppages where I couldn't tell you that if they did let her fight, that Maya wouldn't have come back to win that fight either. It was really kind of hard to say because Maya was also possibly looking a little tired at different times too. So it would have been an interesting fight had it kept going. Now, needless to say, great win for Macy. And I hope they give her like Kayla Harrison or somebody next if Kayla can make bantamweight because Kayla needs another fight. And Macy just beat like the number what? Like Maya was like number 3 bantamweight. So,
yeah, she just lost a title shot not that long ago.
Yeah, so and Macy's got great size, so I think it'd be an interesting matchup to put her against Kayla. Even though I think Kayla will just wrestle her down and take her down, but I think whatever, Kayla still has kind of a lack experience in MMA fights other than PFL, so I think it'd be interesting still to see that, and maybe the winner could get a title fight.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be a rough break for Macy, I think, but yeah, that's good progression for Kayla. Although I don't know if she wants to do that. I don't think she wants to make bantamweight too many times. So I think she's calling for this Amanda Nunes fight, or a title shot. You see her get the title and then fight Amanda, and then she gets out. I don't think she can make that weight too many times. But as far as this fight goes, I don't have much to add. It was a bad cut. It was right above her eye. It doesn't really have title implications, so it's a good stoppage, I think.
All right.
All right, move on to Anthony Smith versus Roman Dolidze.
Yeah, Roman did enough to win. He looked stronger at different times, able to take Anthony down. Anthony just looked a step behind here. He just looked like he got rocked and he never really kind of got back into this fight. Roman now probably going to be a top 10 contender, saying at middleweight and light heavyweight. So, good for him. I don't know. Maybe if he wants to fight light heavyweight, maybe give him Paulo. Well, Paulo Costa's a middleweight, but, that could be a fun fight too, Roman and Paulo Costa.
Yeah, both guys don't really want to cut to middleweight. So,
yeah
that'd be good. Yeah.
Yeah.
As far as this fight, it was a pretty boring decision in my eyes for Roman. Anthony Smith, sometimes he has great fights, but sometimes he just can't rise to the occasion for whatever reason. He looked quite a bit slower, although quite a bit bigger. Couldn't utilize that size, so he ended up with the loss. But good for Roman. Like you said, top 10 in 2 divisions is never bad in the UFC.
Mm-mm.
All right, let's move on to the co-main event, which was supposed to be Brian Ortega versus Diego Lopes. You want to discuss why it was not that fight?
Yeah, so Ortega missed weight at first, and we're going to get a lightweight fight between Diego Lopes and Brian Ortega. And then Ortega last minute ends up with a fever, and they won't let him fight. Commission gets word of it. They won't let him fight. And then Dan Ige messages them and says, don't take this opportunity from me. This is what I'm here for. And basically, he had already been sanctioned. He lived in Vegas, so he was able to walk there. So Stuff of Legends, Dan Ige takes the fight on hours' notice. And it really was the story of the night. And he was welcome big time in there. And honestly, Diego Lopes wins the fight. He looks good, but Dan Ige, like, especially in that third round, I thought looked strong. And, I know Dana was saying afterwards they're going to try to get Ige on the spear too, because he wants that. But we also want to see Ige still keep his fight July 20th if he wants it. So we'll see. That's a lot of fighting, but I hope if Dan Ige does it, I hope he wins. I hope he gets on the spear, and I hope Diego Lopes, who, credit to him too, he was ready to fight Ortega after he missed weight, and he took the sudden last second fight with a completely different style fighter. So good for him, and he got the victory. So for Diego Lopes, I think for him, I hope he gets on that spear card, and I hope he you can either do the match he wanted with Ortega, or give him Volk if Volk wants to come back and fight, or give him Yair. Point being, give this guy a big fight to put him in a position to get to the next progression if he can. If he doesn't make it, he doesn't make it, but I think he deserves that shot.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to add to that, but I just want to reiterate the fact that Diego Lopes is also a badass. You talked about how great Ige was, stepping in on hours' notice and everything, and Diego accepting a new opponent on hours' notice, but he also was prepared at 145 before Brian Ortega had to change the weight to 155. And then he said, okay, fight at 155. And then obviously Ige couldn't cut weight, so they changed the weight to 165 or 160, something like that. So at least 15 pounds different than the fight contract that he signed. So respect to him. Also, like you said, stylistically very different fight. So his camp basically could get thrown out the window for Brian. So respect to both guys, super badass. Both guys showed a lot of respect to one another afterwards. Also, I think they offered to pay Lopes his money without him fighting, and he said, no, I want to fight. So they hooked him up with a fight. So he could have got paid and not fought, and then fought, 2 weeks from now on a different card. But respect to him for just wanting to get in there and showcase himself as the co-main on a big card. So
yeah, I mean, both these guys ended up being heroes in my eyes. So
right, for sure. Yeah, both guys definitely won a lot of fans over too. So let's move on to the main event: Alex Perreira versus Jiri Prochazka 2.
All right, so what can you say? This one I got wrong. You got right. Even though we were both rooting for opposite people here. So, but we like them both, like you said. But man, yeah, I couldn't have felt more wrong. I thought Prochazka would do what he needed to make the adjustments. No, that did not happen. Instead, Alex Perreira lays him out in round 2 again this time, except for even quicker, because he had already knocked him down in round 1. And I think Jana joked about it too, because someone said, oh, he got saved by the bell. It's like, no, he didn't. No, it just delayed the inevitable. And then he comes out basically round 2, gets caught. I can't remember if it was a hook or what, but then it was a head kick. So
he head kicked him. Yeah.
Yeah, I knew it was a head kick. I couldn't remember if there was something that led into that, but either way, it was.
No, he just head kicked him.
Straight up head kick. Okay. Yeah. So what do you say about Perreira? It's like this guy's a fucking star, and he's done it so fast. And I know Dana would say, I know he's a little cautious. He wants to see people clean out the division and stuff like that. But, man, I say you ride this fucking thing out. Like, he's 37 years old. People want to see it. UFC, you've gotten to where you are because you give us the fights we want. Like, we want to see this guy fight at heavyweight. I hope he ends up fighting Tom Aspinall at some point. But I also know he did say afterwards, credit to him, that he wants to show everybody that he's improved with his takedown defense, and he wants Magomed Ankalaev. And Dana said we might do that as well. So hats off to him for being just another badass too. We talked about Ige, we talked about Lopes, but Perreira's cut off that same cloth. And
right, this was a this was a short notice fight as well for both guys, you know. So
yeah, and it's just like I don't know how to say it. I mean, this pay-per-view was more probably about these stories going into it. It turned out it wasn't like the greatest, it wasn't the worst either, but at the end of the day, like one thing I would say, the story of this pay-per-view is like I came out a bigger fan of like Diego Lopes, Dan Ige, and Alex Perreira. Like those three guys in particular, I'm like, man, I can't wait to see these guys fight again. So I don't know. At the end of the day, though, what do you say about Perreira?
I think he's the biggest star in the UFC now at this point. You know, Connor's always going to be probably on another level, but you can see his star is waning with, you know, the losses and now the pulling out and all the antics outside. You know, what is there not to love about Alex and his story? You know, he overcame alcoholism. He was, you know, working in a tire shop or whatever, former Glory kickboxing champion. 2-weight. And he's come in and, you know, his entire MMA career was going to be built off getting into that Izzy fight. And now he's really overtaken Izzy's legacy at this point.
In 13 fights.
Right. In 2 years or 3 years or whatever. Yeah. He's made a very strong bid to be a Hall of Famer in those years. And, you know, like I said, I think he's the biggest star in the UFC. He stepped in on multiple occasions to help out the company. So that is one thing going towards him that I think could get him that third division belt attempt that you were talking about against Tom Aspinall. And also he's getting finishes in all these fights too, which obviously everyone loves to see. It's very hard at the top level, and that's what Alex is doing, finishing guys. So shout out to Alex. Jiri talked about he needs to evolve or stop fighting. So I think he's a bit harsh on himself. You know, it is possible that Alex is just his kryptonite. Ask Izzy. But yeah, he some evolution could happen to him for sure. But I think it was just going to be Alex's night either way.
Yeah, I would say honestly too. I bet you Dana's hesitation is he realizes that even John Jones too at this stage of the game, or Tom Aspinall, they're going to probably be a kryptonite for Alex and Alex such because they're going to grapple. They're so big and they're going to grapple. And basically he knows what a big star he has with Alex at light heavyweight. And I bet you that's part of the reason he's hesitant too, because why take that star out of that division? Even though, I know there's this potential greatness around the corner. It's just that he knows there's a chance he's going to look very average because you talk about Prochazka's kryptonite being Perreira. Well, we've seen even though this again, though, I'm interested because he's such a hard worker. And I look at that Blachowicz fight and a fight that I don't necessarily felt like he won. I thought like maybe it was close and he lost, but he got the win. But the big story there too was that he didn't get submitted while a guy like Blachowicz got his back, and he got up from those positions. And that's crazy when you think about this guy's mainly been a striker his entire combat career, and now he's had 13 fights. Back then, he had 10? So insanity.
He is working closely with one of the best MMA grapplers of all time every day, though, Glover Teixeira. So we know how skilled Alex is. Apparently, he's a very good learner, too. So,
and Glover was a guy that kept getting better late into his career, too, for a while, too.
Exactly.
All right. Why don't we tell people we got coming up?
All right. July 13th, UFC Fight Night, Namajunas versus Cortez. And then July 20th, UFC Fight Night, Lumos versus Jandiroba.
All right.
And then July 27th, UFC 304, Edwards versus Muhammad 2. Before we get out of here, I do want to shout out Brennan Loughnane and PFL. Got a win. He got a TKO victory by kneeing a guy in the forehead and giving him a terrible cut. And then obviously we would be remiss if we did not shout out Brennan Ward, local fighter. Brennan Ward retired after his loss against very tough Dagestani fighter Umalatov or something like that. But respect to Brennan Ward. You know, he's got a family and all that, so he's he's been an exciting fighter for many years now.
Yeah, always been a lot of wars, real warrior. So
Mhm.
shout out to Brandon, great career. Hope you have success after MMA or whatever you end up doing, whether it's in MMA still. So good for you, sir. All right, guys, that's your show. Hope you enjoyed UFC 303, and we will see you back here next week.
If you haven't tried Game Up, then you are missing out. Imagine your favorite seltzer and your favorite sports drink had a baby, but it's way better than that. Each can is 110 calories, low carb, 4.9 ABV. It's a nice light drink that is not light on flavor. Game Up comes in fruit punch, orange, lemon, lime, and grape. Pick it up at Drink Game Up.